We try our best to protect our systems and networks, but it's pretty likely that some sort of incident will happen. This could be anything from a full system compromise and data theft to someone accidentally leaking a memo. Regardless of the nature of the incident, proper incident handling is important to understanding what exactly happened, and how it happened, and how to avoid it from happening again. The very first step of handling an incident is to detect it in the first place. Hopefully, our intrusion detection systems caught the telltale signs of an ongoing attack and alerted us to the threat. Incidents can be brought to your attention in other ways too. An employee may have noticed something suspicious and reported it to the security team for investigation. Or maybe they leaked information that ended up in the news. However you found out about the incident, the next step is to analyze it and determine the effects and scope of damage. Was it a data leak or information disclosure? If so, what information got out? How bad is it? Were systems compromised? What systems? And what level of access did they manage to get? Is it a malware infection? What systems were infected? Some attacks are really obvious, with very clear signs of an intrusion, like a defaced web page or unusual processes consuming all resources in the system. Others may be way more subtle and almost impossible to detect, like a small change to a single system configuration file. This is why having good monitoring in place is so important, along with understanding your baseline. Once you figure out what normal traffic looks like on your network and what services you expect to see, outliers will be easier to detect. This is important because every false lead that the incident response team has to investigate means time and resources wasted. This has the potential to allow real intrusions to go undetected and uninvestigated longer. During detection and scoping, correlating data from different systems can reveal a much bigger picture of what's happened. It might show how an intruder gained access. For example, you could see a connection event logged by the firewall from a suspicious IP address. Searching for other events related to this IP address may reveal login attempts in the authentication logs for a system. This would provide insight into where the attacker is coming from and what they attempted to do on the network. The authentication logs would also indicate whether or not they were able to successfully log into an account. If so, this lets you know what account is compromised. Once the scope of the incident is determined, the next step is containment. You need to contain the breach to prevent further damage. For system compromises and malware infection, this is a pretty time-sensitive step. You don't want the malware or attacker to use one compromised machine to pivot to other machines inside your network. This could broaden the incident scope and cause even more damage. Containment strategies will vary depending on the nature of the incident. If an account was compromised, change the password immediately. If the owner is unable to change the password right away, then lock the account. Also, revoke any long-lived authentication tokens, since the attacker may have one of those too. If it's a malware infection, can our anti-malware software quarantine or remove the infection? If not, the infected machine needs to be removed from the network as soon as possible to prevent lateral movement around the network. To do this, you can adjust network-based firewall rules to effectively quarantine the machine. You can also move the machine to a separate VLAN used for security quarantining purposes. This would be a VLAN with strict restrictions and filtering applied to prevent further infection of other systems and networks. It's important during this phase that efforts are made to avoid the destruction of any logs or forensic evidence. Attackers will usually try to cover their tracks by modifying logs and deleting files, especially when they suspect they've been caught. They'll take measures to make sure they keep their access to compromised systems. This could involve installing a backdoor or some kind of remote access malware. Another step to watch out for is creating a new user account that they can use to authenticate with in the future. With effective logging configurations and systems in place, these activities would show up in audit logs. So this type of access should be detected during an incident investigation. Then actions can be taken to remove access. I hope I'm not scaring you with all these scenarios, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Another part of incident analysis is determining severity, impact, and recoverability of the incident. Severity includes factors like what and how many systems were compromised and how the breach affects business functions. An incident that's compromised a bunch of machines in the network would be more severe than one where a single web server was hacked, for example. You can imagine that the effort required to fix a large-scale compromise would negatively affect the ability to do normal work. So the impact of an incident is also an important issue to consider. If the organization only had one web server and it was compromised, it might be considered a much higher severity breach. It would probably have a direct, externally visible impact on the business. Data exfiltration is the unauthorized transfer of data from a computer. It's also a very important concern when a security incident happens. Hackers may try to steal data for a number of reasons. They may want to steal account information to provide access later. They may target business data to publish online to cause financial loss or damage to the organization's reputation. In some cases, the attacker may just want to cause damage and destruction, which might involve deleting or corrupting data. What actions have been taken will affect the recoverability of the incident. The recoverability is how complicated and time-consuming the recovery effort will be. An incident that can be recovered with a simple restoration from backup by following documented procedures would be considered easily recovered from. But an incident where an attacker deleted large amounts of customer information and wreaked havoc across lots of critical infrastructure systems would be way more difficult to recover from. It might not be possible to recover from it at all. In some cases, depending on backup systems and configurations, some data may be lost forever and can't be restored. Backups won't contain any changes or new data that were made after the last backup run.